Content over everything.
I'm Mohammed, that's Hamza, if anyone gets confused. But you like to talk about Quilliam, right? Alright, Quilliam stated that 84% of child sexual abuse was done by Pakistanis, right? That's what they say. Asians. Then they jumped to Pakistanis, and then they somehow got to Muslims. My first question is this: how did Quilliam find out that the 84%, which they say were Asian, were then Pakistani, and then how did it go from being Pakistani to then being Muslim? That's my question to you.
I suppose you can ask the government that.
But that's the thing, the police...
Why would you quote it?
Guys.
I mean, it's not gang grooming. You know what grooming means, don't you? Think of dog grooming.
What do you
That's
mean?
not what they do. They rape children. It shouldn't be called gang grooming for a start.
Here's the thing. Even that definition, completely flawed. The idea that we separate grooming, right, as a concept is completely flawed. The whole point of grooming is building what? Trust. That's what dogs do. They groom each other to build trust. What do child abusers do? They groom their children to build trust so that they can abuse them. So even your definition of grooming, completely backwards.
It's gang child rape. That's what it is.
Well, listen, how many
There's
people...
a difference.
Let me ask you something.
If you want to
The number of people
like that.
is 240,
It's gang child rape.
right?
Yeah.
And they said it was 84% of that, which is 222.
Yeah.
How many how many Asians live in the UK?
The number is...
4.4 million,
Yeah.
yes? 264, sorry, 220, let's give you all of them. 264 out of 4.4 million is less than 0.005. So how do you then say that...
So we agree on this. So we agree on this. 84% of gang grooming convictions are committed by 3% of the population. Is that what you're saying? If you're saying 84% of gang grooming convictions are committed by 3% of the population, because Pakistani Muslims are 5% of the population, so if you cut that in half, we'll give you the half percent. So 3% of gang grooming convictions are committed by Muslims or Asians.
Muslims, what's the population of them in the UK?
If that's what you're saying.
1.5
That's what you're saying.
So out of that 4 million, you only have 1.5 that identify as Muslim. That means the rest is something else. So that means we can only take a quarter of the statistics that we find anyway as supposedly Muslim, because clearly only 1 in 4 identify as Muslim. So I want to question you, again, even if we were to take 45 Pakistanis, 11 Bangladeshis, how have you found out the identification of their religion? And if they're practicing?
Didn't they identify as court records? Court records.
What court
Exactly.
Court records.
Exactly.
Well, they would have been, wouldn't they?
No.
Yeah, of course they get asked. Of course they get asked.
The police have no interest in finding out the religious background
you don't
of
believe
anyone. So if you want to ask them to do it, go to the Met and ask them to do it.
So let me give you another one.
Make up facts.
Give me a phone now. Give me a phone now. I can give you names. I can give you names. I can give you names. I can give you names and towns.
What's your good name again?
Why is that?
What's your good name again?
Good name.
Okay.
The one you use
So
usually.
it's names, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Question went past it, okay, no problem. The most comprehensive study was in 2012 by the Office of the Children's Commissioner. It is evident that data are more proactively gathered on men and boys of Pakistani and Kurdish origin. Check that out, the most comprehensive study by who? The Office of the Children's Commissioner. Notice there are 3 main studies which have authority in this field, none of which you would of course quote. Only Quilliam is an authority for you. The CEOP, if I can speak here, I'll speak. I'll answer.
Description of the
Let me
police.
finish. So there are 3 organizations of repute here. The first one is the study, the CEOP, which have been mentioned here already, the CEOP. Everyone knows the CEOP, right? And then you got the OCC, the one which I just mentioned, and the Home Office. All 3 agree groomers target according to vulnerability and not race. But there's a group and an element of society which will tell you that these groomers are looking for girls on the basis of their race, but all three authoritative bodies say this is not true. In regards to your question,
Repetitively.
and we've said these things again and again.
So-
the difference between us and you is that we bring stats and figures.
We read
and,
the papers.
stats and
We read
figures.
and the
papers.
thing
Government
is,
figures.
you don't.
They were government figures.
But wait,
That's what we're using.
Government is unreliable.
Is
Wait.
government unreliable?
They're unreliable. Court records will be unreliable, is it?
The government is unreliable, but Quilliam is.
If you put gang grooming convictions up, We can get the towns, we can get the ethnicities.
You can't get the religion.
I'll get it up now. Someone
The
give me a
reports
phone.
that Quilliam referred to say
Give me a phone now. I'll get it up. It'll give you their towns, it'll give you their names, and it'll give their relations.
Okay.
And there's a lot of brothers involved.
Listen, we challenge you here. If you can get the
You made the
out,
claim,
bring it out.
you're
It's
bringing
easy.
the
You have
evidence.
Google, you have your phone.
Sorry, what's that? Wait. I want to hear this. Wait, what?
I think you're apologising for a fact.
So, what are we apologising for?
That there's a problem with Asian Muslims.
No. But this is an important point
yeah,
because this is a
please.
lovely
Can we
internet
talk
comment
about type
about
2 and
apologists and whatever. Wait, what do you mean apologists? Who's apologised for any of the attacks that have happened?
That's
No one.
Silence,
No
isn't
one.
it? That's silence.
So can I keep asking? No, because feminists used to do this. Now the right wing have picked it up. Feminists used to call people who would ask people to do due process for the people being accused are rape apologists. I want to know where you get the balls.
So you don't agree with the stats coming from Quilliam? So you
Can I just further add to that? You now said, yes, that the Asian population have a problem with paedophilia because of the 84%. If you actually read the studies, there were two types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 abused children because they were vulnerable.
Yes.
Type 2 abused children because they were children. That is the real definition
Well,
of what a
what you're about. No, it's not.
pedophile
It's
is.
groups
Guess
and
what?
singles.
100% of them
It
look
was
like
sing-
you
it was
guys.
groups and
Do you
singles.
know
You're
why?
wrong. You're
They
wrong.
were white.
You're wrong. It was groups
They
and
were
singles.
white.
It was
Now,
groups and singles.
100%. Does
You
that
were wrong.
then,
You're
can we
wrong.
extrapolate and now
You're
say
wrong.
that the whole
You're
white
just wrong.
population
You're
have a
just wrong.
problem
You're
with
just wrong.
pedophilia?
You've realised it. You're wrong.
Wait, can I quickly
Alright?
add? Can I
It's
quickly
not
add?
groups and singles. That's type 1,
Can I
type 2. All
Can I
right?
quickly add? I can understand why he misunderstands you in particular. Because do you know why they made a type 2 and a type 1?
Well, because it's
Because-
solo nonces,
No.
and then nonces that rape in groups.
No, this is why it's important to read the actual studies. So the CEOP, the reason why they've made two different definitions is because street grooming has now moved to online grooming. Meaning that people now act less in groups to attack people, and they act more in accordance to the internet, which is a lot more singularity. The attacks are a lot shorter, right? And there's a lot.
What is the ones
attacks
online?
are- the attacks are a
they're
lot shorter.
repeated online.
No. The longer ones are more likely to be repeated. The shorter ones have a shorter window in which the offender can repeat, right?
Yeah,
So
they're
what I'm trying to say,
solos.
no.
They're solos.
But I'm trying to clear this up. I'm trying to clear this up. Relax.
This is a big
So
definition.
when we're talking about grooming, we're talking about it as a whole.
Gang
But you're
grooming. No, we're not about
you
gang
want
grooming.
Yeah, I understand. But
Gang
you want to
grooming.
split that up.
Well, yeah,
because
there's-
the numbers
there's
are
solo
specific.
animal nonsense,
No, but
and
here's
there's
the thing.
gang
Here's the
grooming
problem. It states in the study the more likely offences to happen are the single groups.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the group ones,
Yeah,
the
okay.
single group ones. So why are we focusing on the less likely?
Because the
But we're not
stat is
focusing
off
on
the
the more
scale.
likely.
The stat
Because we
is
don't
off the
care.
scale.
No. I want to point this out.
3% of the British population.
We don't get. No. This is
the
the
reason
point.
for 84%
We
of
do
gang
not care
grooming
about the
convictions.
victims. Let's be honest.
What are you on about?
We do not care about the victims.
That's what
This is why I'm here for the
No.
victims. I'm always
Let
here for the
me
victims. How
finish.
dare you?
Let me explain.
How dare you?
We do not care about
You
the
don't know
victims
nothing.
because we're all here chucking around numbers.
Thank
We
you,
don't
that's
know the
what I
was
we
saying.
don't know
You don't know
exactly.
nothing.
We
You
don't know the
don't know
stats.
nothing.
We don't know the stats, and we
We
don't
don't
even
care
know.
about
We
the
don't
fucking
even
kids.
know.
We know
why-
the stats. The
Oh,
stats
here we
are
go.
there.
We don't even know why these companies and places in particular are putting up these studies in the first place. We're using them as ways to virtue signal right now.
Virtue signal. Fuck
You,
That's a good way of
you,
phrasing
I'm
it,
sorry,
innit?
you and your sector people have been so
My type of people.
overwhelmed, supposedly
My type of
overwhelmed
people.
with this idea that
My type of people.
you're being called Islamophobes,
Oh yeah.
right?
Well, any
I'm
criticism.
so sorry. I'm
any
so sorry.
criticism
I'm so sorry. That
of the
does
Book
not
of
give you.
Affection,
No,
you're
that
an
does not give you the
Islamophobe,
right.
innit?
That does not give you the right to use sexual abuse victims' tragedies
I'm not an
as a
Islamophobe.
way,
I'm not an
as a way,
Islamophobe.
as a way.
I'm not afraid.
As a way
I'm not
of
afraid.
villainizing other people.
coming
So
down
I
there on
really
the
need
29th,
I need to point this out because I think this is a serious topic, but we keep chucking it around as if it's YouTube views. No, it's a serious topic.
You're more likely.
So we
you're
need
more
to
likely.
stop. No,
you're
no,
more. You're
go on.
more likely to have single nonces. Yeah. That's stat,
Yeah,
right?
go ahead.
But
You're
on
uncool
gang
or
grooming
whatever it
convictions,
is, the
Okay.
guy
gang
that-
grooming
the teacher
convictions,
or whatever,
it is so much
in all
more
colours,
related.
end of.
Legit.
Correct me if
With-
I'm wrong, yes,
with-
but we're talking about gang grooming, yes?
Yeah.
And in the reports that were quoted by Quilliam, they spoke about type 1 and type 2. From what I understand, type 1 involved two people,
Yeah.
yes? where type 1 involved two people.
Okay,
two people or more.
Sorry, two more.
There's two types.
There's
One's
two
for
more,
solo and one's for group. So
But-
whether it's like
Sorry, let me just go back, yes?
Yeah.
You then
I
said
get confused on which one's which.
84%, yeah? Were used to then say that Asians have a problem. And I then told you there was
It's
222.
offensive to Asians.
Give me 1 second. 222 people
not
out
million.
of 4.4, because we're talking about the whole of the Britain, not just 2 million Muslims in London.
Yeah.
I think that was the stats. But 4.4 million, 264.
5% of the population.
How do you then say that we can say Asians have a problem, yet...
Well, the reason for
yet-
84% of gang
1
grooming
second.
convictions.
Listen
Wait,
to what's been said.
wait. But there are far more. And who is it? The head of who is dealing with child abusers? I can't recall right now. He said most of child abuse cases was actually dealt. 90% was dealt with by white people. How do we not then say that white people have a
Because they're
problem?
majority of the country,
But then
that's
you
why. They've got a problem, but they're majority of the country.
You've misunderstood
We're on about the
something.
5%.
So now,
But you are
this
the
is the
minority
problem.
in the whole planet,
Let me
and you
finish
still
this
number
one.
1 pedophilia in the planet.
This
Well,
shows
number
that
one,
you've
I'll give you the
misunderstood
good
something.
I'll give you the funny facts.
Don't forget
a big
that.
wedge
Hey,
between the
hey,
communities
you know,
and
gay
fire them
searches on
against each other.
Arab
Definitely,
countries.
That's why I think
the highest
take
in the world.
attention
I don't
away
have-
from
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
real
don't have
issues
an
in the
angle.
world.
It's no
I've been
fact.
doing
It's
this on
number
YouTube.
1
So
pedophilia.
you get your chance to say
Can I also
whatever
say-
you want,
Yo,
right?
yo,
I've got a
but
big YouTube channel. And
gay searches in Arab
I
countries.
think that there's a massive problem between media and stuff like that saying, right, let's fucking set this community off against that community.
I do
right?
think so. I think it busies the people and diverts them
Can I
from
quickly
real
say as well?
issues
Can I
in
quickly
the
say
world.
this argument of a majority? It's not a defense. It's not a defense. Just because you're a majority of a country doesn't mean a crime should exist.
No, I know it doesn't.
In an ideal world, a crime
But
shouldn't
you're
exist.
making the point out. You're making the
That's
point
fine.
out that
That's fine,
mainly
that's fine.
white people
If we go to
are
tribes,
abusers,
if we
the majority
go
of
to
the country are
tribes,
white.
if we go to
You know,
tribes, right,
it's
I'm
not a
touched by the
it's not
civilized world.
a great
How
stat,
much
full
grooming
stop.
will you find there? 0%, probably 0%.
What's that?
If you go to tribes in the middle of nowhere, right, that haven't been touched by civilization, how much grooming you find there?
Because they deal
Because
with
you
it.
know religion, yeah.
It's
They
dealt
don't-
with, innit?
they don't- yeah, but that's the thing. They're a majority. They're a majority.
Could I
But
just get
that
back to
crime doesn't
something?
happen. Do you
Could
know
I
what I'm
just-
saying?
could
So
I-
what I'm trying to say in particular, this whole thing about your majority, so it's okay for you to do the crime. It's
I didn't
not
say
an
that.
excuse.
What are you on about? I didn't
Can
say
I
that
just
straight
say
away. I
something?
didn't say that way.
You
Don't
said-
even infer
I
that.
just wanted
Don't
to
even
come
infer
This
that.
guy really
They're
wanted
all
to come in.
fucking
He really
animals.
wanted to come in.
They're all fucking animals.
Yeah, I'm a regular watcher, and what I've been noticing is basically the people that are doing these acts are getting the most airtime on this. Yeah, the victims are not getting talked about. If the victims are up there watching that, yeah, imagine how they feel about us not arguing between ourselves without mentioning the victims.
Like,
whatsoever.
people are utilising this as a club to hit other people
Then-
with.
then
there are
stop
issues.
arguing.
But that's the thing. That's the thing.
We're-
Can I quickly point out? We have certain people who will come here to the park, right, and use their relatives as some kind of a reason for them having a vendetta. Bear in mind, the victims already
Who
have
you
a
on
hard
about?
time. No,
Who you
wait.
on about?
Oh, wait.
Who
The
you on
victims. I'm talking about Raj.
I knew you
I'll
were
say
on about
Raj.
Raj. I
I'll
knew
say
you were on
Raj.
about Raj.
Now,
you
the victims already have a hard time retelling their cases when they even go to report them. For you to be coming to the park and telling everyone her story, do you not have any shame?
No,
Do you not have any shame?
I think he was. I think he was told that by someone.
Say that again?
Someone brought that up.
Now,
Can I just go back to
Someone brought that up. That's why he took
before we
offence.
burst
Someone
the
brought
bubble,
that
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Someone brought that up. That's why he took
white
offence.
bloke, my granddad's gardener, white
Yeah.
bloke, right? He had his hands all over my bollocks as a fucking 5-year-old kid. Not very nice. So I can say, I know how it feels.
Yeah, no,
But,
exactly.
but
exactly.
we were trying to get two communities, or three communities, whatever it is, off against each other where we need to go, right, we've all got a problem, let's sort the shit out.
But
That's
the
what
only
I feel.
problem,
This is actually a resolution.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people have been sticking on the point. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Nobody actually throws forward a
Here's the thing.
resolution.
no, exactly.
When we all get
That's
together
what
and
it's
decide to
about.
deal with
It's
it,
a
we've got to
resolution
look
instead
at
of
the House of Commons. We've got to look at the top of the
We
police
need to-
force.
we need to
They
solve the
don't
problem.
want us to deal with it,
I
right?
agree
We just
with you.
solved the problem.
They want us to argue amongst
You know,
ourselves because when we all get on together, right, and
the
start
one with-
working
the one with
together,
Tony Robertson.
we'll go, what about that
29
fucking lot?
people
And they're
in
going to go,
court,
we're in this shit
in
then.
court.
So we'll just get you all to argue
27
amongst
of them
yourselves.
men,
That'd be a lot
2
easier.
women,
I agree
all
with you
Muslim.
100%.
You can't get
There's a
away
pro-
from it.
Can I
there's a
just
problem
go back?
there.
Sorry.
I mean, Telford.
I'm going to get to the
Telford,
solution.
6
I don't
weeks
want
ago.
to dwell on this, but he said
A
something
thousand
and then
girls,
it comes back
a
to
thousand girls
have Pakistani
abused
friends who
by
go
the
back to the
male
they're
Muslim
killing us.
population of
They're killing us,
3,500.
they're grooming,
You have somebody in
all sorts
jail
of
for
stuff.
I grew up with a Muslim.
How's that
He's
even?
a Muslim, but he was from
One thing.
Pakistan.
Yo, guys. One thing. Can I say one thing?
It'll come to me
I
in a
mean,
second.
Telford. You know about Telford recently? Telford
I
recently.
come from a
heard
tiny
about
little
it,
village
yeah.
where
There's
the,
1,000 girls abused
basically, I
by a
can't tell you
Muslim
because
male
I'm talking to
population of
myself,
3,500.
But it's near West
That's
Tiny little
outrageous.
village near
I
there.
understand.
Right,
There
but
is
they're the
also
only,
gonna be,
But why isn't the
Muslims
imams
there.
out?
Nobody
Why aren't the
bats
imams
fucking eyelids.
out?
They
Let
come
me
out, they
point
join
out.
in.
Let me
Come on,
point out.
berserk
Let me point
on
out.
this.
We love them.
You say
You agree with me? It's
No, I
bonkers, yeah?
understand. I
Muslim
understand.
girls
Now,
are getting
noticed,
course.
I've not
Of
lived
course.
in a
I
village
would
or
say
anything.
the only
But I tell
reason
you
why
this,
it's not
prior
being,
to 9/11,
Shazia Hobbs says
it
that.
was cool.
Shazia Hobbs says
Everyone
that.
was fine. I used to go to
Muslim girls
university.
are-
I barely
Muslim
realised
girls
I
are
was
targeted
Muslim. I
too.
was
Yeah,
younger then.
another thing, right?
But
When
as we
we
got
talk
older,
about
everyone
Islam
kept
and
on
their
questioning us,
accountability,
telling us,
I've
you're
already
Muslim, you're
rounded
Muslim,
up a bunch of
you're Muslim.
questions that I'm going to
Why
ask
is
Hamza
this?
today about Islam and its problems in general. But the thing is, I'm going to a Muslim to sort that out, right?
How are we going to deal with this
You
terrorism problem before it
are
actually
demonizing
fucking happens?
everyone else and making it a thing where they are alone. You're not helping any solution. You're not offering any solution. You're not offering any suggestions. You're not offering any kind of aid. Give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. Does anyone remember when Grenfell happened?
Alluding to maybe later.
What establishments opened themselves up to help the victims of Grenfell? It were mosques.
Churches.
It were mosques.
Churches.
It were
And the mosques. Yeah, any
Yeah.
religious.
Right?
Any religious.
So to say that the Islamic community is not self-aware about their social justice is a complete flaw.
You've got everything open their doors.
Now, wait. Now, you just mentioned Telford. Yeah? You just mentioned Telford. Now, with Telford, right, there's a prominent Asian community. And yes, the crimes that happen there, they're repulsive. They're absolutely repulsive. But now you're taking Telford, which is a small town in the UK,
Rochdale, Rotherham,
Of course.
Oxford, Newbury. Yeah.
Yeah. You're taking one town.
Blackpool.
I understand. You're taking one town in the UK, right?
I'm not. I've just named 7, 8 off. I've just named 7, 8
You
off.
are applying it to the rest of the UK. Now, if I go to Scotland, right, where there's probably a minimal majority, like
all the
Asian
stats
majority.
are there. All the stats
If I
are
go
there.
to Scotland, if I
You
go to
just said in my ear,
Scotland, if
there's
I go to
45
Scotland, and I find out that it's 90% white people, am I then going to say we have a white people problem in the UK? No, because that's not how you conduct generalization. That's not how you conduct research. I'm so sorry.
You can't keep going out to get these.
I don't even know what
No, you can't.
the fact is.
I'll go further. You're stuck on 84%.
No, I was just mentioning Telford.
Let me put forward what it is that I'm actually trying to say. You're saying 84% of these grooming gangs were done by Asians. Therefore, Asians have a problem. What you didn't realize, one we've already pointed out, type 2 of grooming gangs was 100% white. But we don't say that it was 100% white. Read the reports that William Rupert referred to. We do not say that white people have a problem. Let me make my point. The reason being is the percentages don't always work out right. We could have one person, let's imagine there's no child abuse. Here are the arguments. Imagine there's no child abuse in the whole country. Imagine one person, he's white. Let's say he's white, yeah? He commits this crime. Do you know what the stats then say in percentages? 100% of child abuses are carried out by white people. That percentage now looks a lot worse. Do you understand the logic?
I understand the logic.
What did I say?
I understand the logic of 84% of gang
And it's driving it more under
are committed by 3% of the population.
No, you completely lost it. You didn't
No,
understand
it's
at
a
all.
fact.
You didn't understand
Well, what's
at
the
all.
Muslim
I
population?
told you
What's
there
the
were
Muslim?
222 Asians. Which one we don't know if they're Pakistani and definitely know if they're
psychological
Muslim.
I can get the stat up now, but I'm on here.
Get it up.
I'm on here now. Someone give me a phone, I'll get it up.
Sir, have you?
Give me a phone, I'll get it up.
222, yes, out of 4.4 million. How do you then say 84%? You don't understand it.
Have you visited anyone that's been groomed?
So do you think they just
222.
target Muslims? Do you think they just target Muslims?
Do you know what they did? I'll tell you why.
Is that what
Imagine
they
this.
do?
Imagine this.
Or do you
yes?
think it just happens
Imagine
because
this.
it goes
Imagine
on?
this. I say, and I'm only using this example because this is what I can think about. But the black population who are arrested is higher than any other population. Therefore, there is a problem amongst black people. Now, let me finish this point. Now, we can extrapolate and say, look, black people are somehow, they have some sort of tendency
Why are black people getting killed
towards.
in London?
Be
Is
quiet.
this a gang problem?
They tend to go towards criminality. But what you
Why are
do,
people getting knifed?
what you do is you're ignoring other factors. The other factors, such as that black people are more likely to be stopped by the police, and then secondly, the
More
whole
likely to be
judiciary
stabbed as
system
well.
is
Hurt.
run by white people, and therefore black people are
There's
more
no
likely.
stopping searches now, is
What
there?
I'm trying to say is, yes,
Unless they can guarantee you've got a weapon, they can't stop
the
the
make the
searching.
point, man. What I'm trying to say is this: they look for a very specific crime, where it just so happened Asians were dominating in there, and then we said, oh look, we all Asians have a problem, but it doesn't work like that.
How can you refute, right, a Muslim think tank, right, giving you the stats.
I'll ask him. Can I ask him this?
Yeah, you're
William, they have no
Imagine
authority
you are
to do
the terrorist
hear what I'm
in
saying?
Egypt. Yeah.
Imagine William
He's an
has
apostate.
no authority to speak about issues about
Is he an
child
apostate?
abuse.
Is he
I
apostate?
used to work for the government. I'm
Is
not
he
going to
apostate?
start doing research into
It's
child
imagine you as
abuse
apostate.
because I don't have that authority or background knowledge. Okay, listen.
Imagine you are
William
apostate.
Foundation, what have they got to do with
Imagine you
child
are
abuse?
apostate.
Have they ever studied a piece of work
Imagine
on
you are
child
apostate.
abuse?
Listening to you.
Yes?
He's programmed. He's anti-Islam. That's it.
Is imagine you are apostate. Do you agree with imagine you are?
Listen, that's neither here
Oh,
or
you're
there.
not going to pass coming imagine you are?
I tell you what, though,
Okay.
he did win Islamophobe of the Year award. Yes, by Southern Law.
Did you vote for him? Did you vote for him?
Another interesting fact.
Funny, isn't it? The owner of the Quilliam Foundation, who did this research, he was awarded an award for being an Islamophobe.
Yeah, because he
Who
exposed his
on
criminal
earth wins
gangs.
an award for being an Islamophobe? But that kind of tells you what kind of people these are that dealt with this research, which they shouldn't do, because terrorism is what they're supposed to deal with.
He was into
And even then
terrorism.
they
Imagine
can't.
you was into
There's a
terrorism.
difference.
He was in Egypt
You
for
can say
terrorism.
Islamophobe.
The
You can
Brits
say
got him out.
Islamophobe.
Yes, he was in prison. Yes,
terrorism.
which kind of
For
tells you
terrorism.
more about him.
For
He's gone
terrorism.
from one extreme
For
to the other
terrorism.
extreme. He's still an extremist.
Interesting fact, one of the guys that's high up in charge of looking after kids turned out to be a
Yeah,
fucking
exactly.
paedophile.
The very
Right.
regime. Like, come on.
But, you know,
Right, but we can't say this just generally.
No,
We have people
we're
who are black, white, Asian.
Can
I'm
I-
not gonna then say this because something about your skin color, you're a paedophile. It's stupid. You live in the real
Can I-
world.
I'm not going on skin colour, I'm going on facts. We're going on facts.
No. You're too smart.
know
No. You're too smart to be getting angry about this. You're too smart to be getting angry. No. Don't worry. Passionate here, whatever. We've got so many other subjects that we can address. We've just shown that when it comes to white death, right? We just talked about the Black Lives Matter to 4 people who took on the disabled kid and tortured him, right? Complete high, nothing but sympathies. You just said, right? There's people who are Islamophobic. We know this. This guy laughs. We just talked
But it's
about.
you always go to, innit?
We just talked about.
I get
we just
called on
talked- wait, wait, wait.
Islamophobic every time I talk
We
about
just talked
Islam.
about black pride.
Every time I
right?
talk
We just talked
about
black
Islam.
pride. This guy says, why are black people killing each other in the UK?
I'm supposed to call me a
So here's
racist.
the thing. No. Here's the thing.
What kind of
Oh, wait,
hat is he
yeah?
wearing?
There he
You
is.
tell
Yeah,
him what
exactly.
hat he's wearing.
And the guy's
I'm a
wearing.
racist, didn't I?
The guy's.
And a
No, wait. I think
Yeah, yeah.
No,
See?
genuinely. I think we need
Standard.
to spend less time with people like
So
this.
how am I being
Because
racist?
it's very clear. They don't read. It's very clear
you
they
don't
have
know
an
how we're
agenda.
racist?
It's very clear that they have hate in their heart.
Thanks for your input.
I'm just
Thanks for
I'm
your
speaking
input.
to this gentleman here. He's able to build a bridge so we can go back and forth
So
and
can
discuss the topic.
we start labelling people
This
then?
whole thing about building the bricks for the wall
I do this
right now.
Can we start labelling people? Can I start labelling
Talking about
things?
solutions.
Can I
yes?
start
Yeah, I
labelling
was
you
gonna
then?
say,
The CEOP actually mentioned some of the
you like
causes
kids?
of why these people were vulnerable.
Vulnerability.
Which
Do you
is
like
the
kids?
reason
Shit
that so many
parenting. Do you like kids?
Shit parenting,
Question,
drugs,
families as well, that can be a problem sometimes.
drugs also, and alcohol abuse. Yes? And not only that, can I just say, a lot of people say, why were the perpetrators Asian? What few people actually mention? I don't think
but you just called me a
mentioned
racist.
this, but they actually constitute a large
we
amount of
can
the
all-
nighttime
unless you're thinking
economy.
about it.
Are you alright? Now,
He's
nighttime
just called me a racist. He's called me something.
thinking about it.
He's called me something very offensive.
Thinking about it.
He's called me something very offensive. He's called me something very offensive.
influence.
He's called me something very offensive.
Shut up. And so we have these people.
He's called me something very offensive. He's called me something very
How could you
offensive.
come up with a question like that? Do you like children?
Well, he's just called me a racist. He's just called me a racist.
What's your name, buddy? Simon.
Okay, how am I a racist? That was the next question. How am I? How am I? How am I a racist? Because of this hat.
Yeah, what's it mean? What do you want?
So what?
Sorry, there's a few things
I
on
think
board
it's
there, but I
on the
want to
downward
lead
spiral at
towards
the
like
moment,
some sort of solution. But the first thing, a lot of
Aren't
people
you?
said it was because
Does that
they
make
were
me racist?
Asian.
Does that make me
They
racist?
were in nighttime economy, which dealt with alcohol. Put them into
I'm a racist, yeah, I'm a racist because I'm wearing the hat.
vulnerable people, right? And the people that so happen to be white, the vulnerable people so happen to be white, only, and in the report they said that is because they were given greater liberties than other ethnicities.
Now they're allowed to swear
That's
because
why they were
they got
white,
these
and that's why they were Asian. Not because
Stand.
they were Asian, they have
Bar
something in their
straps
culture
and
to
they
then
get
look for white
stand.
girls to
Stand.
abuse.
The quickest way to sort of problem that's got.
Let him walk
He's a racist as well, is he?
walk through Labs Grove.
Hey, trust me, I walk everywhere with
Isn't
this.
it?
Is
No one stops me where
We'll
I
go around
Take
ignoring
your
each other
boyfriend
go,
to some
"Oh,
couscous
about
in
you."
Labs Grove.
Would you get beaten up for that? Would you get beaten up for that?
Take your boyfriend
Would
to
you get beaten up for that? Is that what you're trying to say?
Idea. It's just
Break
like
break
Religion
the
of peace,
fight,
eh?
get on with on each other.
How do you know what religion I am?
I can't
Just say it. Just say it.
Or the
How do
Sikh
you know what
faith, or
religion
anybody
I am?
else for having suspicion of the white people.
Because I've got brown eyes and I've got
the
a
white
stomach.
people.
We have crap people amongst us. It's like that.
So you have a problem with
Everybody doesn't know where I'm from. It says religion of peace. So is that not
He
judging me on my looks?
said he'd have a problem walking through Lambeth. He said he'd have a problem walking through Lambeth. That's what he said. He said he'd have a problem walking through Lambeth.
But it's similar to Raj, isn't it? Raj said, how do you know if
they
Muslims are
mentioned
Muslim?
three
If
things
his
that I
name
can
is Muhammad.
remember. One of them that the girls were vulnerable because they were influenced with the nighttime economy.
I think it was.
Where's Mohammed
I think in the Leeds case.
And the other thing was a lot of them were homeless.
Let's try again.
I am Muslim and I
talking about solutions, these are the factors I guess we have
somebody
to
said
talk
my
about.
name is Muhammad.
On a grander scale as well, I do feel
some of them
this is a bit
aren't
tricky one
as
because I think this is
devout
where
as but they still
it's
call
funny.
themselves
And people such as himself right? There's a middle ground where
Why
I
is
believe
Britain
there's
not
a lot
great
of values that have gone
right now?
especially when it comes to parents.
Because it's too many foreigners.
When it
I
comes
mean,
to
think about that.
I feel there's a lot of values that have gone amiss. No one says that you have to wear
Prevails of adversity.
wherever you go.
And I think, but
the whole point of the
to be honest, when we were down on our knees, that was the best time because we all pulled together. Now we've got it's all gone so easy, and the country's going to shit.
Why is Britain not great? Because you've got foreigners, you've got Muslims in your country. Is that what it is?
No, not necessarily that. There's a lot. I've got no problem with immigration. I believe in controlled immigration. I believe in controlled immigration.
The whole point of it is
I mean, personally,
You don't believe in like it being a multicultural country?
sorry.
You don't believe it being a multicultural
I
country?
totally agree with the multicultural country, but only with professions we need.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, professions we
Yeah, it's
need
very
at that
decadent,
time.
exactly.
When we had Christianity,
Sorry?
a religion, back in the day, it used to be Christianity.
You mentioned Muslims.
You said, do you agree with controlled immigration?
Yeah.
We were shamed so bad, but you were self-policed.
Well, you said Muslims. I didn't mention Muslims. You mentioned Muslims. Not me. You mentioned Muslims. No, you mentioned Muslims. You said Muslims. So you don't want Muslims. That's what you said. That's what I'm saying.
was brought up under
That's what I'm saying.
some form of
Yeah, that's what I want.
Christianity,
Control
right, as
immigration.
the parents were.
I want to control the
And we have
immigration
morals.
that comes in our
And if you
country,
didn't behave
which is
yourself, you got
understandable.
slap.
Why have you? Let me ask you. Have you got a problem?
And they are fundamentals.
Foreigners
They are
coming here in
fundamentals that
different
you all
countries better than
have
their
more in
lives.
common.
No.
But the problem is,
Because
like you said,
if I was in a shithole country, I'd want
the
to bet
Middle
my
East, we've
life.
seen that
Seems
they've
that
had
way
a
with
hard
a hat,
time
mate.
going from a
No, but
MDC to an
I don't blame
MDC.
anyone for coming to
Made
Britain
it
to try and
quicker.
bet
We
themselves.
are an MDC quicker. So we're now enforcing our
Yeah, I'm
MDC
Polish.
cultural kind of like influence onto a place that had a hard
Polish. I
time
don't like
slowly
English.
coming up into being an
English
MDC.
people,
More
English
economically
people.
developed.
I could take great
The
offence by that.
cultural values are going to take a little while to get to where
Well,
we're at.
it's a good.
Even if that's superior, I don't necessarily think it's
copying
superior.
Trump? Come up with something.
Come
Come up with those cultural values.
Come on, have some Trump. You got that hat from Trump.
Sorry,
You got that hat from Trump, mate.
I got that free. Off the phone.
American people, what is it called? The Industrial
I got that free.
Revolution.
Yes,
On the back-
exactly.
On the back of colonial, they stole a lot of resources from non-Muslim. Sorry,
Take your hat off. Take your hat off.
But listen, but are you serious about immigration control?
So anyway, they
Can
took a lot
you
of this
retreat
on the
from
back
North
of
America and
this
South
theft.
America
They then
and
had the
Australia?
Industrial Revolution, which
Can you
brought
take all the
us
white
to
people
where
out
we
of
are now. Now the West are far more advanced in terms of
Let's go
technology
back to
and
doomsday.
industry.
And far more corrupt at ripping people off.
Right. But then how do you then look at a country who hasn't stolen anything from anyone and then say you're backwards?
You take guns and you take over.
I can understand why a country would be pissed off, because when you bomb the shit out of it, rape it for all its mineral resources, then call it a bunch of fucking animals.
Can I quickly jump in, because I just want to say there's a danger here, right, of blaming white people, and I don't want to get into that discussion where it's blame white people feel guilty. I want you guys. Say that again?
You just blame the greedy people.
That's the thing. That's the thing. You need to remember when we're talking about white people, we're talking about a very small 1%.
We don't have the control.
Exactly. That not only bullied our kind of people,
I've got a problem with
as
terrorism.
well. So when we talk about these stuff, I want us to have a nuanced kind of platform. Where it's not white blame, black blame, kind of thing. I want everyone to be able to
chopping their heads off.
we all have lower class working people in all communities.
But now they'll go to the Jew question, and they'll go, oh, it's the fucking Jews. No, it's not the fucking Jews.
So you radical?
It's everybody who's fucking greedy.
The Jews. Or chopping people's heads off.
Population. They control the whole world.
We're on on the same
we
page.
can't even agree with each other, but we believe the Jews are all clandestine in their agreement of dominating the world.
Nasty, horrible,
Like,
Ben, Goyim shit.
I feel like he raises a really good point.
Solo offences,
our
the
values
whites are
are
right
a
up there,
privilege.
right? So that's because they're the majority of the country.
And
We're on about gang grooming. This is the problem.
And then we then turn around and say, why are you guys so backwards? Kind of thing.
Most of the paedophiles in this
That
country
is a
offensive are
disconnect
white.
You
in
know
how
why they got
much
away
we
with it
value
for 30
human
years?
life.
You know why they got away with it
Because
for 30
not
years?
only
They got
do
away
people
with it
help
for 30
build up
years
our
because
economy
they weren't
and our
being tackled.
society,
That's why they were shitting
they make us opinion in our
They were sticking
society,
the
but we're
Catholic
able to
priests
just
shit
dismiss them as
all
backwards.
countries, right?
Just
In
because,
diocese,
you know,
and they were getting
it's like
education
it
for them.
refers to like
That's
Trump's
why
comments
they
about
got away
calling
with
certain
it. They
places
weren't
shithole
being
countries.
tackled. And that's the problem.
You
I'm
are the
afraid
president
your
of the
community's
free
in the
world.
world.
You should
Not
not be
being
entitled to
tackled.
such stupid
Not being
things.
tackled.
Because you know the only reason America is America is because you got free labor from blacks.
He is as subtle as a brick through a greenhouse window. I've got to be honest, isn't he? He does for diplomacy what Nick Leeson does for financing. You know what I mean? It's fucked. But he is the leader at the moment. But these places are backwards. But they've got corruption in their own country. And then our corrupt fuckers go to their corrupt fuckers and say, I'll grease your palm, you fuck your people. I mean, if we were in a third world country here, and there were a rich country saying we want to nick all your stuff, our people will go, yeah, fuck it, we'll have a bit of that.
Exactly.
Your demographic.
People see foreigners come here. The big problem is that it's the idea that they're trying to run because their world is not good enough. Not realizing that it's a circulation. They come here to work, and most of the majority they go home because they love their country. They love their culture. So it's nothing to do with superiority. It's to do with financial benefits.
You know when the Polish came over here and started working, crack on. We went over to Germany in the 80s and did the same fucking thing, right? It swings and roundabouts. You come over here, as long as you, I don't even give a fuck if you don't like the country, as long as you don't tell everybody, right? Just come here and work, right?
Precisely.
Behave by the laws.
But the problem is we forgot this. We forgot this quite fundamentally, just in the sense that we had the ancient Greeks, right? And we often look into them. We look to them because they're the fundamental of Western society. No one realizes that the Greeks went to ancient Egypt to get their education. Now, that's the Greeks that we hold so high going to an African country to learn about the fundamentals of running a society, which ultimately benefited them. But we've forgotten that history because we need to deem certain people as much lower than us. And that's what people call white supremacy. I'm not trying to say everyone who's white is a supremacist.
It's also classic.
Yeah, it's almost a classism thing where you kind of make someone lesser than you, not realizing that it's their grafting that allows you to have certain privilege. And just having a sense of humanity and a sense of understanding to that would go a long way.
The white privilege thing, right? I don't go with all of that, right? All the time. I lived in a van for fucking 6 months, right? And it wasn't even a properly kitted out van. Hey ho, I've done well on that. Anyway, I don't believe in it, but it's an argument that people keep chucking in the middle.
Because I don't know too much about this. I've been meaning to look at it. But white privilege is just described as someone who is white, but it's because they're supported by power. We've heard this issue.
I'll explain it quickly, but like honestly, it's.
And I know what it is.
The definition has been so polarized that it's lost all meaning. And I think this is on purpose to belittle the argument. Now, when we talk about white privilege, a lot of the times it's scheduled. It's like put in the American context, because in America we know there was a systematic racism. Now, if we talk about say like even the wars, right? The war when we had World War II, we had millions of soldiers conscripting to go and fight for the U.S. Army. Black soldiers in particular as well, even though the country treated them like shit.
Yeah, they treated them like shit.
Yeah, when they came back, these soldiers were allowed grants to buy themselves houses and buy some land to start afresh and start anew. Only less than 2% of these grants went to black soldiers.
That'd be about right, but if you look at the Windrush, we invited them back over here after we got bombed to fuck by Jerry because they fought so hard for us. And also, we didn't have enough labour here to build the place up. And they came over, they assimilated it, and that was great. And then we get this shit lately, which fucking pissed me off.
It's a little bit...
My issue with the whole white privilege thing is I think that it doesn't get taken into account, I'd say, the major problem within the black community, which I'd say is fatherlessness. And that's the number one problem that is holding the community back. And just the promotion of the welfare state and giving single mums houses and removing the father from the family, and then the kids grows up without any positive male role models. But what I don't like what the left wing are doing is they're saying, well, actually, it's white people who are holding you back, and I think a lot of it is just that's rubbish.
Do you think it treats like white people as homogenous, and it doesn't distinguish through maybe classes, as you mentioned? Because I don't know how to articulate this, but this is a touchy topic. I don't know if you really saw, but there was a rift between even Muslims, between the black Muslims and the Asian Muslims. I think Kalam actually covered this the other day.
That's what I would love to get into,
It's actually really, I only read a little bit, but a lot of people said, yes, that they said that white people can't be racist because it's only prejudice. Sorry, black people can't be racist because it's only prejudice. It only becomes racism when you're supported by power. Someone, I think, misapplied this and then said this also can be applied to Asians, but I didn't really understand how that's possible because Asians are a minority within a greater power who is run by white people. So I don't see how Asians couldn't be. Sorry, under that thinking, I didn't understand how Asians could be racist.
So this is really good. So he set up the context so I can explain this. Thank you for setting that up. And this is where it gets into it. So when we talk about the privilege, right? And it's one of those things where, like you said, they like to make it homogenous, where all white people are privileged from birth. No, it's not. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And we need to make it clear because the truth is, by saying that, you're dividing a big number of people and alienating a big number of people who for the most part, are numbers we need, and for the most part they're on our side, looking out for the human rights of everyone else. Now the problem is, when we talk about white privilege, right, and privilege in general, right, we're talking about the systems in the past that didn't allow certain people to lay foundations forward for themselves. Now we know that when the Irish came over as servants and slaves to the Europeans, right, in the Americas, they worked for 75 years and they were allowed land, right? Now having land is a big thing because it later allows you to set the fundamentals for your family to own wealth. Now that's already a setback for the black community because they weren't given that. Their labor was completely free, right? So that's a setback already. And then we go into the housing situation, right? So I just explained this World War II and how housing...
It made it really difficult for the Windrush generation to buy houses, right?
Exactly.
Really hard. So what they did is they set up amongst themselves and they put money in together to buy a house. It's the only way they could do it.
This is it. In America, it's a similar procedure. They made certain neighborhoods, right? Red class, blue class, and green class. And that basically determined the level of wealth in your actual community. Now, they made it automatically that any community with a colored person is diminished by value. That was the rule. So meaning that the people who lived there and were white were forced to move out because their property was going down. This was the scaremongering that they did to white people back then. They would then move them to the suburbs where they introduced a policy where it said no colored person is to enter a domain where it's 100% white. Right. Now that you have a suburb full of white people, you have no brown people that can enter. And that's where the term, there goes the neighborhood, comes from. Because once a black person moves to the neighborhood, the value starts to decrease. Okay. So basically what happens after that is, after they sell their property, they then try to sell this property that they've just sold at an inflated rate to people of color. Meaning that people of power can't buy property. They're forever stuck in a place that basically is indentured poverty. Because when the people take their money elsewhere, like here, we do our money in a pot. We distribute it quite thoroughly throughout the UK in a pot. In America, it's done via borough. So your borough will receive how much your borough is basically contributing to your society. Meaning that the schools, the infrastructure, and just the services in general are going to receive more funding. Whereas the red areas with the minorities are receiving less and less funding, while the property is skyrocketing. Meaning that they can't buy property, they can't move to the suburbs to buy property, and these other places who are seeing their wealth go up are seeing better schools, better education, better healthcare, and better resources in general. This is why the difference between life expectancy between black Americans and white Americans is so different. But if you go to African immigrants, there's not that much of a difference between them because they haven't been through that system. African immigrants are the most educated in the Americans, but that's because they haven't gone through the same system that the African Americans have. they're higher educated than the Asian immigrants that move into it.
I see this as a ubiquitous problem now, that it's everywhere, and it's not just the say the black community right now. I think it's everyone who.
Just keep an eye on him because I've got to make sure he don't get killed.
Keep him safe. Keep him safe.
I figure it's everyone who's actually struggling to buy their house now, and it's because house prices have gone up massively, and I mean I'd say part of the problem here is we have the rich immigration to London and various super rich foreign investors who are buying all the houses, and so like a local person can't actually compete against that. And all over the country you're seeing young people who are not buying their houses.
And that is the problem though. Where there's no social mobility, it creates a problem for people who are in the lower bracket of the social class. And we know that the reason the minorities take it as such a minority,
there's a bit of a fight going on here.
the reason minorities take it as such a minority homogenous thing is because minorities are disproportionately affected by being in the working class and being in poverty. But where I think they go wrong is that they miss that there are also white populations within that community as well.
I mean one of the things I dislike, and I think it's the same problem within white working class families, and it is removing the father from the family. And to me that just creates a Jeremy Kyle generation.
I was going to say, this is the thing, you brought up like fatherlessness in the black community, and people love to throw that around and think it's something that's innate in black culture.
No, it's not.
Exactly.
It's getting worse for everyone now. And
this is it. We see now people are blaming feminism and stuff like that for the rise in fatherlessness houses. But the problem that minorities have is that whenever people talk about fatherless black community, it's an intrinsic thing where it's a black community thing.
It's not intrinsic.
But they don't realize that the same spectre is coming for their society, and you can see it now in the 50% divorce rates, and it's only increasing. So for me personally, it's one of those things where the more and more we ignore each other, the more and more this cycle is just going to catch each one of us very slowly. And then we're going to think, what the hell were we doing this whole time, arguing about such arbitrary subjects when we're all in the same shitty boat?
I completely agree, and I think it's I mean, it's like the people who grow up in that environment. I think a lot of them just become dependent on benefits and aren't actually able to sort themselves out in their lives, and fall into crime and kind of low-level drug dealing quite often.
I think the problem with that in particular, especially like say within the black community, it's a very dangerous subject, because when we talk about like drug crime and stuff like that, we need to remember there's someone who's importing and exporting these drugs. And this is definitely not a black person, because black people don't hold those positions of power. But what I'm trying to say is, when it comes to finding worker drones to dispense those drugs, it's people from vulnerable backgrounds who tend to be their prime pickings. Whether that's white boys in Scotland or that's black boys in London, they don't care for the race. It's people who are vulnerable and less attached to the family, as you say. So I think the problem that we need to, like you say, address is just how the power complex seems to keep the power so that no one can have social mobility. But at the same time, there are certain groups, like far right-wing groups and far left-wing groups, I have to agree, that enable that by just sorting out this division between us. Because for me personally, I grew up in Bethnal Green. It's a very multicultural kind of like setting. So I didn't grow up with this idea of white privilege. I didn't grow up with this idea of the whole white community is homogeneously racist. And I spent a lot of time trying to defend just generally what I thought was a bit of a blanket statement towards all white people. So for me personally, I would like to get rid of the term supposedly white privilege and really paint it for what it is, which is honestly the 1%. That is it. So how do you think, you personally, as someone who's on, you can see both sides, but you have a strong identity in not being blamed for your skin color, which is a good thing. How would you recommend minorities approach this a little bit better? Because I would like to get rid of that divide and division between us.
I think that I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work that Jordan Peterson is doing. I think it's very important, and it promotes self-reliance, and I think there has been a failure of masculinity generally, and I mean we've kind of feminized the culture too much, and it's becoming more and more incapable of sorting itself out and less self-reliant and so on. That's what I'd like to see more of is just men generally learning skills, learning trades. I mean, go to university if there's some advantage in doing so, but otherwise just become a plumber, just become someone who actually has something that they can offer the world, that the world wants, and that will pay money for. And,
I absolutely agree with you, and I think our education system has a lot to be accountable for. Like, my girlfriend studies law, and some of the stuff she tells me, I just think is a human right that people should know. I don't understand how law is not a core subject in secondary school, right? In comparison to, like, say, not English. English for me is not a bad subject, but I would rather prefer law over English in our schools. However, I do have to say we have to be very careful in demonizing feminization, because women are important to our society.
They are,
and we have got to that stage where it's not so much Stone Age, and women can earn for themselves. And there's an equal proportion of, like, who earns and who doesn't earn, and so on and so on. Because you need to understand, men are human beings as well, and we need our time to drive our passions, to explore our enjoyment, and to enjoy life. We can't just be constantly providing. That's how we fall back into that conservative trap of just being men who come home, don't even speak to our wives because we're too tired. Our wives go off and cheat with X, Y, and Z. We split up.
I agree with that. That's kind of taking it to the other end.
So I think it's important we get that nice middle and understand.
I suppose I just see the problem, say, with
someone who, of masculinity.
For instance, someone who is on the benefit system, let's say, and also guys, I see quite a few who just drink all the time, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Why are you living this way? Like, how is this any good? I mean, like a few pints here and there, but just all the time, and then how are you going to get up in the morning and actually provide any kind of service that people want, and then you'll create value, and then you'll be valued by other people for doing that.
Precisely, but the only problem is a lot of these people tend to come from very broken homes. And that's why there is a benefit system, because we want a safety net for people like that. Like you say, in order to rehabilitate them and send them back out into the working world. But there's a lot of people who just seem very kind of destined to be reliant on that situation. Because once you get into a comfortable situation, why would you want to bother after that? So I feel like, for me personally, there's a lot of competitiveness in the society that we do need to, like, rely on.
I'll join you now. I'll just wind it up.
We'll wrap it up. But there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of very pro-neo-capitalism that drives a lot of insecurities, drives a lot of over-assertion of masculinity, over-assertion of competitiveness between the men in particular, who back in the day would have cooperated more than out-competing each other. I see a lot of men who are very insecure about their own friends, and this is not a trait that I have ever viewed as masculine. Like, me and my group of guys, when we were growing up, we were very cooperative with each other, and that is the brotherly bond. But I feel like that has been very severed in the last decade or so, and we've become very competitive, we've become very superficial, we've become very shallow. I mean, for me personally, even taking it from, like, say, I'm
going to have to join them, so I'm just going to wind up there. But cheers, man. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Generally, I feel like this kind of conversation is where the future's at.
Fair enough.
Like, I really do feel like if people get this more conversation out and we build that bridge, that's where we'll start to see resolution.
All right, cheers, mate. Have a good
luck, man.
Nice one.
See you later. I kind of don't want to leave the camera because, like, Omar might switch that it gets jacked, so I'm just going to stay here and make funny faces.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
I think 2/3 of world military
in the shipping lanes is dominated by America. And the Chinese have got like, what is it? I think it's 1 aircraft carrier, maybe 2 now, one, and that's a second-hand one bought from the Ukrainians.
Aren't the Chinese making a line, a train line or some communication line from China all the way through to Europe?
Now there are many 80 different countries encompassing 60% of the world are engaged